Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now? We've only just went and scored 4 goals and got into a semi-final, but Brendan Rodgers, the manager, and a lot of the fans are not too happy with the performance on the pitch and not too convinced by maybe some of the green shoots of improvement that we've seen. But we're back for the Celts are here flagship podcast to talk everything Celtic Livingston, Celtics and Johnstone, and yeah, I suppose everything in between. I am Quinny, and I'm joined as always by Josh. Josh, good to see you, mate. Hail, hail.
Good to see you. Good to be back in the show. Obviously, a relatively convincing win in the end at the weekend, and we've got quite a few things to look forward to: semi-final draw, injury news, etc. So a lot to get our teeth into today.
And again, coming back in the base of midfield, like Tomoki Awata, we've got Michael back on the podcast. Michael, good to see you, mate. Hail, hail.
Good to be back. I hope I'll impress like Awata has done in recent weeks. Looking on the back of that Livingston result at the weekend, it was certainly an interesting game. It could have been a boring game by some aspects, but Livingston certainly, to their credit, came to try and get a result.
Big time. I think we were all expecting or hoping for a result, like a scoreline, like the one we got, certainly, maybe conceding 1 or 2 less. Because everyone has kind of wrote Livingston off, and for good reason, from what we've seen on them. But one thing that you do know with our team and with our manager is in a one-off game, like, you can't completely discount them as being, not competition. So, yeah, it was definitely one that's, we're glad to lock in the bank, but it's definitely divided everyone. Josh, you were at the game yourself, weren't you?
Yeah, it was an interesting one because obviously the general consensus, at least from the manager and some of the fans, seems to be that the performance wasn't there. For me, I feel as though apart from a 15-20 minute spell in the second half, at the beginning of the second half when Livingston scored, the performance was relatively quite good. Attacking wise, Celtic were very good. We know Dissecting and Maeda got the hat-trick. Nicholas Kuhn looked a rejuvenated player from what he has been in recent weeks. And overall, a lot of energy to the play. I just feel the majority of the problems lie in the defence. And Stephen Welsh and Liam Scales, for me, it's not a competent partnership. And the way, some of the way they conceded chances, etc., shows how critical Cameron Carter-Vickers is to this team. I think it was only precautionary, Brendan Rodgers leaving him out. Bit of a shock in the starting lineup that he wasn't in the squad altogether going into the game. But in the end, thankfully, Celtic didn't miss him. Could have easily been moaning at Brendan Rodgers for making that decision to leave him out if, say, Livingston went on and got a shock victory. But in the end, a scoreline that was probably reflective of the game. I would say 4 goals is a fair reflection of the way Celtic played their attacking football, and Livingston scoring 2 is fair in the way Celtic defended. First goal, big gaps in the defence, and then the second goal, Matt Riley giving away the ball, very poor from him. He's not really been his usual self. He kind of toned up a bit against Dundee a couple of weeks ago, but since then he's not really been playing well. And Tete Yenge, take nothing away from the finish, it was a brilliant strike from him, the Australian. I think he was playing like second or third tier Australian football like 4 years ago. So quite a rise to prominence from the boy, and I think he'll cause the backline a lot of trouble at the Tony Macaroni Arena in a couple of weeks. But that's something to look forward to near the time. But fair play to Livingston, like you were saying, Michael. They came to Parkhead. Not usually they come out and actually try and attack and play football. Like you look at, they came earlier in the season. Celtic won 2-0 just before Christmas, and Livingston didn't register a shot on goal. They went to Ibrox earlier in the season and didn't register a shot on goal either. And because it was the Cup, David Martindale obviously said to them, we need to actually attack this game and try and play football. And fair play to them, they did. And they managed to make a game of it. And that's just a message to him that why not just attack the games and not do your constant sitting in football terrorism? Because you actually give yourself a chance of getting a result. Because there was a part of the game when it was 2 each and Livingston got a free kick far side and the ball comes into the box. And Joe Hart has to make a really big save to prevent it from going 3-2 Livingston just before the hour mark. So fair play to them. But in the end, scoreline's probably a fair reflection of the performance for me. I don't think it's as bad as people are making out, but I do recognise that there are improvements to be made in certain areas.
I think there's a lot of factors to take into consideration. Roger spoke after the game about Matt O'Reilly and suffering an illness throughout the week. Yeah. And he didn't actually speak about that before the game. So with O'Reilly, he's obviously been suffering through something. And he wasn't at his best, that's clear to see. But the way Matt O'Reilly's been so consistent, I'll give him a pass for that. If Rodgers is speaking about he's been suffering through an illness. You look at the defence, we've got Welsh and Scales. We were missing Carter-Vickers. We've spent money on Lagerbielke. He's on the bench. And we've spent money on the Rocky. He's injured. So realistically, looking back in maybe September when we've made those signings, we would have been looking to have maybe 3 or 2 of them in the squad, but they're not there due to injuries. So that's a big issue. Callum McGregor not being in the side, that's yet another big issue. His leadership in the midfield, it maybe means we're disjointed and we get caught through Livingston. So with Welsh and Scales, I don't think the pair of them are good enough to be starting centre-backs for Celtic. To come into the side with injuries, yes, but at this stage of the season, it would have been vital to have other defenders in the starting 11. We'll badly miss Carter Vickers. I'm not 100% sure on the timeline with that one. Rodgers seemed to play it down, but then he was speaking about a scan. And as we all know, a scan is quite misleading if you're going to say that it could be a set number of weeks, because a scan could completely derail that and make a complete whole new timeline. So that would be deeply concerning, especially with the Rangers game in just about a month. We'll be excited to get Rio Hatate back because he will bring a new dynamic. For me, Bernardo's had plenty of time to prove himself. He had that great spell of form before the international break, but he just seems to have went back to where he was before that. It's very sad because he looked like an incredible player in those 4 games before the January winter break, and I think we were all getting a little bit excited. He showed that part of his game. He can pick up assists and score goals, but we just haven't seen that since. On Nicholas Kuhn, I think that's another thing we need to talk about, the circumstances with him. Rodgers spoke about his weight loss and how it's had an effect on him, and his strength and his pace. Because for me, he didn't look as fast as people were speaking about him, but that's obviously the factor for that. And at the weekend, he showed a different part of his game that maybe people wouldn't be aware of. That through ball to Dyson Maeda is incredible for a winger. How many wingers can play that pass? So we'll badly need that to get through defences. So for me, I think we got through. That's the most important thing. But there's things going on in the background. There's injuries and certain things like that we've had to deal with. So for Celtic, it's the most important thing is to get through to the next round. And personally, I'm very happy with the draw.
Yeah, the draw's an interesting one. Aberdeen. It's probably one of the easier ones you could have got, because Hearts, of course, saved a lot of bother this season, beat them 2-0 twice, and obviously the Derby game speaks for itself. You'd have had 2 in the space of 2 weeks if we drew them. But yeah, Nicholas Kuhn stuff is very interesting. He lost 7 kilograms. That's over a stone over the time when he left Rapid Vienna, because they had the big winter break between November, December time, and when he played his first game for Celtic, Bucky Thistle, might have been his debut, or the game after that at Pittodrie against Aberdeen where he scored. So, yeah, the Kuhn one is a very interesting point, because so far I think we'd all agree that he's not been good, and really impressed as much as you would have wanted a £3.5 million player to. But now it's emerged that there's obviously ongoing issues in the background with him, and seems to have got over them. And the opportunity to come into the starting 11 obviously arose at an ideal time for him, and he's managed to get back to fitness, back to full strength, and he comes into the team and he takes his chance well. He spoke about that ball for Dyson Maeda for the goal. See the one he put in when Michael McGovern came off his line for about the byline, and he crossed it all the way deep into the back post for Maeda. That was an absolutely brilliant ball as well. Had a couple of shots on goal, and he looked very creative. So for me, it's good to have 2 players fighting for that jersey out on the right. We know what Yang can bring, and now Kuhn looks like he's coming onto a game and he's going to get the start on Saturday against Johnstone, because Yang's suspended yet again. So another opportunity for him to build that consistency in terms of his performances. And obviously in the other wing, we've got Dyson Maeda, who's absolutely flying at the minute. Hat-trick, we're all big fans of him. I suspect he can keep his head as long as he likes, as long as he's going to score goals like he did. He could have had more than what he did. He obviously hit the bar a couple of minutes after he got his hat-trick goal. A very effective performance from him. I don't think we've seen much of him on the ball, but he just popped up at that back post constantly, playing brilliant balls across goal from the likes of Kuhn, Johnston, even Tomoki Iwata getting beyond the last line of defence for the 3rd goal. So a very positive performance from Maeda, arguably one of his best in a Celtic jersey, and up to 11 goal contributions now for the season. So hopefully between now and the run-in, he can build on that hat-trick and put in more good performances.
Yeah, for sure. I think Dyson's definitely one of the big winners of this game for sure, getting that hat-trick to really get his he's been present for a little while now, but he did have that injury kind of early mid-season that we didn't see a bit of him for a while. And Maeda's one of these guys that divides the fan base, and I'm really enjoying listening to everyone else who I remember naysaying him for the last season, saying we need to drop him and Palma, let's play Palma and let's do this and all the rest of it. Dyson is quality, but the thing about Dyson is we all know is he's not got that touch of grace or finesse or guile to be able to really like take opponents out of the game. But what he's fantastic at is the simple stuff. Get him into the final 18 yards and he'll put somebody on a plate or he'll tap the ball into the back of the net in any way he can. And, it's great to see him in this game get the hat-trick from that left side as being like a second striker in effect. And then having the other winger actually capable of trying to play a ball in or run between the lines and do some of these things that we've not really seen too much of. We started to see a bit of it from Yang, of course, before the suspension. But again, probably the losers of this game, like both of you have mentioned, is clearly the defence, where a lot of people are saying Welsh and Scales from this game against bottom of the table, hopeless Livingston, didn't look formidable, didn't look secure, and all the rest of it. Now, Scales for me is in the team, no two ways about it, all day, every day. But what I do think you see in this partnership is that Vickers clearly is number one. He is the alpha, he is the leader, and alongside with Joe Hart, like they control and marshal the defence, and especially without McGregor in front, that void is really felt, isn't it? Because Welsh and Scales, what they're probably both, or what they are both individually good at, is just dealing with himself. Am I one-on-one with a guy? Do I need to win the ball in the air? Am I getting pressed? Can I play the ball to the right back or play it into midfield? And they're both kind of decent. Well, Scales is pretty good for my money at those kind of things. But when it is taking charge of the situation, if it's reading the game as it's moving around, then because both of them are quite like linear defenders in that way, where they're kind of just dealing with what's in front of them, what they can see and touch, is when you maybe get these kind of gaps flowing up. With Lagerbielke been on the bench earlier this season, I think we went 3 or 4 games on the bounce where we played Lagerbielke and Scales, and I think we got a nice run of clean sheets together. Now, I don't think Lagerbielke fills a Vickers void, but that's a partnership that has some synergy going to it, so maybe I would just throw this back to you on the defence, the forwards, whatever you want to come back to me with. But, with the Rocky being injured, maybe Vickers comes in for St Johnstone, maybe we leave him in Cotton Will. But, do you think this defensive situation, because it is going to be Scales and someone, that's what it's been all season, but do you think Welsh, because he's been given a chance over a couple of games, to be the guy in place of Vickers, to be Vickers, understudy almost when he's injured or when we need to rest him and rotate him? And is this game maybe put him down the pecking order and Lagerbielke gets a shot? Or
I think the manager rates Welsh. I feel as though he doesn't rate Lagerbielke at all, and that's shown with the amount of minutes he's played over the course of the season, not even being in squads when he's been fit and not making the bench. Obviously made the bench at the weekend. But yeah, I do like Lagerbielke. When he initially came, I felt as though he wasn't quick enough. That was my main concern with him. He wasn't too fast. But he does have a decent range of passing, and he can win his aerial duels. He came on in that cameo, we all remember, against Feyenoord in the Champions League. Very good defensively, and got his goal, his only goal that he scored for Celtic so far. And when you're getting a guy like that for, what was it, £3.5–4 million, Sweden, young Sweden Player of the Year, you're going to get a good talent. And obviously Rodgers is not probably seeing enough from him in training, or he favouritised Welsh, he prefers Welsh, either or. We don't know what goes on at Lennoxtown. Maybe Lagerbielke has his nudes on his phone or something like that, or Welsh on his phone, we don't know. But I do like him. I would like to see him given the opportunity, excuse me, particularly after what we've seen from Welsh at the weekend, not up to the required standard. So I would potentially excuse it from Welsh if it was against the Hearts and he was up against a Lauren Stratland or a Bojan Miovski. But when you're up against Livingston, you're expected to deal with the threat. I don't think he done that adequately. And Lagerbielke, if I was the manager, Lagerbielke would be having a run in the team over Welsh. But I am not, and unfortunately I think Brendan will prevail with playing Welsh.
Ironically, Lagerbielke hasn't suffered any injuries in comparison to our defenders, which makes it very interesting that he's not played that many minutes since September. When you look at it, Carter Vickers suffered injuries, and the Rockies suffered injuries. Welsh has suffered injuries, and with Welsh, I don't trust Welsh to play a consistent number of games without getting an injury. It's safe to say that Welsh just seems to have that injury in him as well, like Carter Vickers. But I think maybe the difference is with Carter Vickers, we're not monitoring his fitness and recovery well enough, and that's been a consistent problem for me. I thought about that this could happen with Carter Vickers. He could have an injury setback. With the long-term injuries that he's suffering, and you bring him straight back into the squad, it's clear what's going to happen if you're rushing him back too fast. And with the defence, it's been a lingering problem. We need that consistency, but at the same time, we can't rush players back for injury because they'll suffer setbacks. And we've became so over-reliant on Carter Vickers, and it's becoming a little bit too worrying when we see the squad without him and what we can do. When you look at Scales and Welsh, their choice of passing at times is a little bit concerning, and they're maybe playing straight to each other and maybe not a little bit in front of them. But when you're looking to maybe get up the pitch, and both of them, they maybe need that leader alongside them, as Quinny spoke about. A Carter Vickers can guide them through the game. That leadership's so important. When you look at Scales has had an interesting career. It wasn't that long ago he was playing for a university team in Ireland, so a lot of people forget about that. And to come to Celtic, he wasn't even playing as a centre-back in a back four. He was mostly playing as either a left-back or he was playing as a third centre-back in a back five. So this is a completely different role for him. And we're expecting him immediately to be able to play the passes and drive into the midfield with the ball, and comparing them to defenders who've done that throughout their career. Even the Rocky, he was more experienced than Scales. He'd played games in Europe. So it's harsh on Scales in what we're saying, but at the same time, we want immediate success. We can't wait this season for things to just happen. And with Welsh as well, he's a Celtic fan. He's come through the academy. We're always going to have him in our favour. He'll likely stay around for European games as well to make the quotas. But that just sums up his Celtic career. He has a great game. He signs a new contract, and in the same day, he suffers a long-term injury. That's just his Celtic career in a nutshell. Most of the time, I've been a fan of him. He's not made too many mistakes when he's been on the pitch, but at the weekend, you see that goal in Livingston. He just played it right through the Celtic defence, and he's at fault. Him and Alistair Johnstone off the right, the space in behind them. But when you look at that as a defender, that's incredible to see that a team like Livingston. And we all probably looked at Livingston before the game, thinking that this could be a convincing win. Arguably, of all the teams in the quarter-final of the Scottish Cup, with maybe the exception of Greenock Morton, that this would have been one of the easiest ties, but it certainly wasn't, and that's a credit to Livingston. But at the same time, these players that are coming into the squad and thinking that they can maybe make an impact in the second half of the season for Celtic, they're doing the opposite. They're negatively affecting us. Whereas somebody like Kuhn, he's had poor circumstances, and he comes in and he makes that impact. So it's really about character and being able to drive through games, even though you're maybe just coming back from an injury setback.
Yeah, I think the thing with Welsh is it's games like that on Sunday where you're wanting him to come into the team where you can afford to give Carter Vickers a rest and Welsh can come in and do a competent job, but arguably didn't. Now, I'll just raise this point. He's talking about centre-backs. It just came to my mind there. I'll get both your opinions on it. Would you be happy with moving someone like Tomoki Iwata back into the defence potentially? If, like, say Callum McGregor comes back fit and you get Hatate back fit as well, and you've got the midfield three of McGregor, Hatate and O'Reilly, which is arguably the best you can get. Iwata probably doesn't get into that. So when they're all fit and firing, do you move? Would you move him back into the defence as a sort of leadership figure? Because I've been at games in the past at Motherwell where he'd come back to the back line and when the ball's out of play, he'll be chatting to Welsh and Scales and whoever it was at the back at the time, telling them what to do, kind of coaching them through the game at least. So he does seem like a leading figure in that team. What would you think about that?
For certain games, I think, when you're maybe playing Rangers, but that physicality aspect, Rangers are over-reliant on crosses into the box. And when you look at in the Scottish Cup final, he was at fault for one of the goals. He doesn't mark Daniel Mackay for Inverness at the time, who scored at the weekend. So I think maybe Iwata is good against deep-lying defences, that he can drive with the ball. Being a midfielder, he's got that range of passing. So for me, that seems like a good idea. And it solves the problem if Callum McGregor comes back into the side this season, that we can just slot McGregor back into the holding midfield role. We put Iwata deeper and alongside Scales. Iwata's an experienced player. He's quite a leader, Iwata, I think, when you look at his career, what he's done with Yokohama. People forget about that. So for me, that seems like a very smart idea. But do I trust Brendan Rodgers to make that decision? Probably not.
Yeah.
I would fancy Iwata in defence. Like Iwata, me personally, but I would rather play Tate left back rather than play Iwata centre back. And that problem of how do you get all four of them on the pitch? Just because every time you see Greg Taylor on the front line, I'm just all, when Tate's on the pitch, I'm always just, you would rather have Tate in that space for doing that. So, and we've seen him play, I think it was right back rather than left back, but last year he played at full back once or twice last year and it was wild. But Iwata prior to Yokohama was a centre back, like out and out. I know at Yokohama he played a bit of both. But he played for, I think it was Tokyo or something like that, but he was an out-and-out centre-back before making that move. So I know we've not seen as much of that in his career history prior to signing him, like right before we got him, and even really with us, it's been 50-50. But yeah, if the problem is getting all 4 of them midfielders in play, I would probably go Hatate to the left. Yeah. But I think I would probably have went with I would probably, if Vickers can't play St Johnstone, or we don't want Vickers to play St Johnstone, I would maybe try and give Lagerbielke it. I don't know. I don't know. I suppose against that Bear, maybe you fancy Welsh to have it. It's a kind of funny one. But I think like with the McGregor situation, like the quotes from the manager we were talking about before coming on, but the directest quote we've got from him when it was kind of happening was, "It's just going to be managed." It wasn't as bad as first feared. So I think at first they were thinking they put a boot on him, they sent him for a scan, and their initial thoughts were, we're not going to have him back until after the international break. And then Rodgers, the way he was talking, it was like, we don't actually know. He might be back, but what we're going to do is we're just going to treat it like what we first thought. And we're just going to treat it like he's back after the international break, and if he's back before that, whatever, kind of thing. That was the kind of gist and the kind of sentiment of what we've actually had from the manager. There's been a lot of rumours and speculation that's came out thereafter. But I think if we get Hatate back after the international break, and we've been looking at the calendar, Josh, and the injury reporting and whatever on the show for the last 2 or 3 months, the time for Hatate is nigh. The comments came out last night, which I'm sure you can share with us. But I think the best midfield we probably have on paper is Iwata, Hatate, and O'Reilly. And if we don't have McGregor available for a good couple of weeks, he's going to be under severe pressure to force the issue to get back in the team. Because if we do play that midfield 3 and we start really ramping up and really putting teams away and the football's energetic and electric and everything else, then, I know it's McGregor, but how do you drop somebody,
I can see the point. I feel as though McGregor comes into the team no matter what, just because he's a captain. You can see what he can bring. See if Celtic are struggling in the last 20 minutes of games, he's the man who can drive them on. We've seen it at St Johnstone away earlier in the season. He can take a ball, he can go on a 20-yard run to bring the team 40 yards up the pitch, do stuff like that. So I feel he comes into the team no matter what. I can see the viewpoint of Iwata, Hatate, O'Reilly, because that is total dynamism in the middle of the park, and you could easily see Celtic ripping teams apart like that. But McGregor probably comes in no matter what. At the weekend, I don't imagine he's going to be involved, apart from sitting in the stands. At the weekend, hopefully, he can be back for the first game back, the Livingston game, after the international break. Obviously, the international break will give a lot of players a chance to kind of build that fitness, the likes of Hatate, your Carter Vickers, your McGregors, because they'll get a solid week of training with no games. Hopefully, potentially play a bounce game at Lennoxtown or something like that. We don't know. But the injury situation it's one that's plagued Celtic all season. It seems to have, you look at Carter Vickers hasn't even played a derby this season. Hatate has barely been fit, and it's just been so hard, both for the manager and the team in general. Hatate one is interesting. Obviously, Rodgers' comments last night saying that he's probably going to be back after the international break, the first game back, the Livingston game, like we thought when we were on the pod a couple of weeks ago. Last week it might have been. We kind of earmarked that as one where he could come back, and he's had the injury problems throughout the season, and hopefully now over the international break he can solidify his fitness and do pretty well and get himself back into the team, because we know what he can bring. He can change the game in like that in the drop of a hat. Kenyo Hatate, he's one of the most talented players in Scottish football. He showed it in flashes at times this season, but he's not really had that consistency. I mean, he comes back into the team, it'll look like he'll make a difference. But like you were saying, Michael, it's about managing these injuries and not rushing these players back, particularly in a game like, say, Livingston away, an AstroTurf pitch. It's not the greatest. You don't want to kind of start Rio Hatate in that one, and he pulls up 15 minutes in. So you need to manage it carefully. And I'm sure the medical staff and Brendan will do that, because at least in midfield, it's not like the defensive situation where you're heavily reliant on Carter Vickers. Don't feel the midfield situation you're heavily reliant on someone like Hatate when you've got guys like O'Reilly, Iwata, potentially McGregor fit again. Bernardo can show it at times when he's on it, but he hasn't been on it in a long while. So it's not as urgent to have Hatate back as it is to have someone like Carter Vickers back, in my opinion. But when you do get him fit again, he's someone who can contribute massively.
I think for me, watching Awata, sometimes I've maybe picked up on something when he's maybe got the ball, he doesn't look over his shoulder at times, and the opposition striker maybe comes to take the ball off him. It kind of worries me a bit if you're playing maybe an intense game against Rangers, but Rangers would be up for it at Ibrox. With Awata, how would he live under that pressure? And if McGregor's fit, I would just play McGregor with his experience. You look at McGregor in December, he arguably had his best game against Rangers of his career, but for that role, he was driving Celtic through at Celtic Park in that game with those drives through midfield with his dribbling. And when I look at the Hatate situation, for me, that's about relationships and consistency. Taylor, Hatate, and Maeda have played together. They played together last season. They've built that. They can play those patterns of play. That's something that's been an issue for us this season. You speak about injuries. These are players that have come into the side and they've not played together for a long time, and we're expecting them to play as well as last season. Whereas you're talking about, that's 3 players for the starting 11 that would have played week in, week out last season. As good as Hatate is, he links up well with Taylor, and he also links up well with Maeda. They can all seamlessly work off each other. Hatate maybe compensates for Taylor's weaknesses and his pace. Taylor likes to move inside. Hatate at times likes to move out wider. We've seen that more towards the end of last season. Hatate was moving out maybe onto the left-hand side, and especially against, I think it was Rangers in the Cup semi-final, he was doing that. So that's something that I picked up on, where Hatate is an excellent player. And you're going to get the best out of those 3 players if they're playing together. Maeda has been playing better, but that's understated that Maeda has had to play off the right-hand side. A completely new role. He's had to play with Alistair Johnstone. He wasn't really playing off the right-hand side. He'd maybe move there at times in games, but that's going to be so crucial. We can see the patterns of play when those 3 play alongside each other. And we have O'Reilly. I think O'Reilly will consistently play, and it must be quite worrying for Paulo Bernardo, because are we really going to see too much of him if Hatate comes back fit? And he's been in all honesty, Bernardo's had enough time to prove himself since January. I know he's maybe been a good player against Rangers in a one-off game. He's had a couple of games against St Mirren, Dundee, where he played well. But for me, I wouldn't extend his loan spell at this stage of the season now. It seems to have shifted yet again back in the opposite direction for where it was before December. So it's an interesting issue for Brendan Rodgers to solve. You speak about Livingston and the pitch. That's really the stuff of nightmares for Hatate coming back for an injury. But as long as we know we can get maybe 60 minutes out of him against Rangers at Ibrox, we know what he can bring to the side, and we know what him and Maeda and Taylor alongside each other bring to the Celtic side. And Rodgers speaks about that he hasn't made any adjustments in the style of play and how fast they play. So maybe if those 3 play alongside each other, we can see more of that team from last season.
That's a big porky pie, by the way. I heard him saying that as well, and what a load of nonsense, because all he was telling us the first half of the season was, I don't want to be flying by the seat of my pants, and this isn't a basketball, and I like control. We want more control. That's the only thing we need is more control. So I've heard him saying this as well a few times, and I'm like, bullshit. You've been saying the opposite earlier this season, so don't try and kid on. You've just let Kennedy run Ange Ball training sessions all year, and you're just there, like, keeping the vibes going, and I don't know, sticking the tunes on in the changing room or whatever he's meant to be doing then, if he's not changing the style of play. So I heard that as well. But Bernardo has had 4 or 5 games that were decent, and it's like end of December, early January. And like you say, Michael, quite rightly, he's had plenty of chances to really build upon that and kick on a bit. And he's going to really fall out this midfield picture very quickly, I think, which, when the season's all said and done, as long as we get over the line, I think you'll just look at the contribution he's made and went, hey, it was a loan. We didn't lose anything, and we got the job done in the end. So the small contributions he's made to this point, also the derby was a big win. Nice goal for that. And anything he does make between now and the end of the season, it was a decent loan. It wasn't a bad loan that we had this time. Maybe similar a little bit to Ida, who we've not really touched on from the Livingston game. No goal in this one. And Kyogo super subs on and maybe puts a wee bit of pressure on that number 9 spot. I did find it interesting that they didn't both, share the pitch in this game, considering the cup and, the kind of the temperature of the match and stuff like that. Kyogo, Ida, again for St Johnstone, we're kind of doing both these things at once almost in some ways, but there is a few, the whole team is really coin toss situations, except for Alistair Johnson, Taylor, Scales, and O'Reilly and Dyson. I think we put in that conversation now, don't we?
Yeah.
But
I was quite critical of Rodgers when he brought on Kyogo for Ida, because I was like, he should have just left Ida on, particularly when we were chasing a goal. And Livingston, known for being a physical side, at the time we were putting a lot of crosses into the box. Kyogo's not the tallest, as we know, and when you're hanging balls up, you want someone like Ida. So I was quite critical when he brought Kyogo on, but I felt he made a positive impact in the game. So it gets his goal. From the stands, it looked a mile offside, but when you see it on the replay, it's a mile onside. Looking at his contributions at Tynecastle as well, although he lost the game, he made another positive impact there. I feel he's getting quite a few shots in and goal, linking up well with Ida there. So for me, he probably starts this weekend. Got a goal, made some positive impacts in games, and he does not really manage to do well. He missed the penalty at Hearts, didn't manage to get himself in the score sheet at the weekend. So Kyogo probably comes back into the team in some capacity. At the weekend, we spoke last week, Quinny, about putting him out wide potentially against Livingston at the weekend. Obviously, he ended up starting on the bench, but yeah, happy for him to get the goal. Obviously, he's had a kind of drought throughout the season. He's been inconsistent with his goals compared to what he was in the last campaign, but it was just a show that what he can do, form is temporary, class is permanent type thing. That's the level of Kyogo is a really clinical finish for him. So very happy for him to get the goal, and hopefully we know what he's done against Rangers this season. He's scored the winners in both the games. So hopefully now he's just coming on to a wee run of form. If he gets a wee goal against Johnstone, goes to Livingston in a couple of weeks, gets another one, all of a sudden he's on a good run of form going into the derby, and that's what you need from a player like him who in the past has been so talismanic, but kind of fell off this season, but hopefully can kind of build between now and the end of the season in a similar fashion to Daise and Maeda, where they're both getting on form.
There's two ways I look at it. I, like Josh, was maybe frustrated at taking Ida off and maybe not playing a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-4-2, depends what way you look at it. But when I look back in the game, you look at O'Reilly losing the ball in the middle of the park, and that's even with three midfielders. I think Rodgers would have looked at that as if you lose another midfielder, things like that could happen again. And in all honesty, he might have kept O'Reilly on the pitch if he'd done that. And so you'd be leaving him open to that counter-attack situation happening again. So in all honesty, Rodgers made the right choice because they won the game. Forrest comes on, he makes an impact. Kyogo comes on, he makes an impact. But we've seen such a change in role of Kyogo. He's dropping deep. How many times in that game at the weekend, I lost count, that he was having to dribble and drive past people. Is quite interesting to see, because last season he wasn't doing that. We were even talking last season at times about how Kyogo, how many touches did he have in the game? He'd have 3-4 touches in a whole game, and he'd score one goal, and that would be him for the game, and we'd be happy with that, because that's a great contribution if he's scoring goals. But now it's a completely different role, and at times it kind of worries me, because is that his game and the adaptation towards that? But he gets a goal. And for me, if a striker comes into the side and they score, they play the next game. That's the sort of psychology you've got to play with these strikers. Because what message are you sending if Kyogo comes on and he scores and you don't play him next weekend? Like, well, what more has he got to do to play in a game? And for Ida, maybe he gets a week out the side and he's not in the starting 11, and he will have to come on for the bench. You've got to build that competition between two strikers, because at times maybe we can play 4-4-2 or 4-2-3-1, whatever way you want to see it. But we probably won't play that, because we're so set in our possession football, and it maybe drives up the chaos factor a little bit more when you've got those two players up top and you've not got as much balance in midfield. And with O'Reilly, I think that negatively affects him when O'Reilly's maybe having to play in a midfield too. But then if you're playing Kyogo, the way I see it, if you're going to play Kyogo, you have to have Yang and Johnstone on the side, because they're playing more of those crosses along the ground into the box, and that's what Kyogo thrives on. Ironically, Ida scores a late goal like that against Motherwell, and Kyogo would have thrived on that. So it's up to Rodgers and how he sees it. Surely, he said he watched Celtic in the years he was away for the club, and which slightly confuses me, and how much we've seen Kyogo's role change this season, and the sort of balls we're looking to play into the box. We're not really looking to do them, but at times looking for wingers to maybe cut inside more than we did under Ange. So if Kyogo comes into the side, we need to play his strengths. Okay, he's maybe becoming a better striker in some aspects by how he's looking to drop deep and add new aspects to his game, but we need to play his strengths. And with Ida seems to fit more into that set style of play with Rodgers, because it's just been an immediate impact. But when you look at the game at the weekend, he didn't have a good game. Kyogo comes on and he makes an incredible impact. And we talk about Forrest, that could be another factor now. Is James Forrest going to be starting games? And for me personally, when I see James Forrest in the starting 11, it worries me a little, because Forrest has his greatest impact when he comes off the bench. Like, you look at the age of him, he's not going to be able to even play 60 minutes, in all honesty, because that's a tough ask of him. Rodgers speaks about that. But in the same aspect, I was watching the game with my family, and my family says, what sort of message does that send to other wingers at the club when you're saying a 32-year-old James Forrest is the best winger at the club? You've got young players coming into the side like Yang, and you're saying that's not a great thing to say for me. I know Forrest has had a great career, but Rodgers is certainly leading the James Forrest fan club.
Yeah, definitely. I think with his comments on Rodgers, obviously he's talking about best winger at the club, and in terms of accolades and what he's done in the past, can't argue with that point. But let's just say James Forrest is the best winger at the club now. I'm sure we would all disagree with that point. If he is the best winger, like Brendan is saying, then why is he not starting every week? Of course, he said his age is a factor, but if he's the best winger, then start him every week. Now, probably, I think the gist of his point is that on the ball and what he can do with the ball in comparison to other wingers like your Yangs, like your Kuhns, guys like that, Palma, he is the best, but he can't keep that consistency up for, like you even said, probably even 60 minutes, 50 minutes, a half. You don't even know what you're going to get. But I think I agree with you, Michael. When he comes off the bench, he just seem to do well. Roger said a couple of weeks ago, I think it was his press conference, might have been before the Dundee game or just after the Dundee game or whatever it was. Forrest is going to have a part to play between now and the end of the season. And obviously that points came true at the weekend. Comes on, gets an assist. It was his header that went over the top for the Kyogo goal. So I don't imagine he starts any games between now and the end of the season unless we're in an absolute crisis, but you never know with Celtic this season regarding injuries. He probably continues to come off the bench and hopefully makes impacts like he did in the game on Sunday.
Maeda scores a hat-trick in that game as well. It's crazy that you're saying Forrest is the best winger at the club when your winger on the other side scores a hat-trick. Like, how many managers would come out and do that? Sometimes the things Rodgers says just confuses me. Even at press conferences, that when you ask him a question, the way he'll answer back is he's an interesting guy, to say the least, Brendan Rodgers. He's maybe harder in some ways to understand than Ange was. Ange was much more straightforward. You could really see that Ange was more deeply focused on consistency and what to do, the message, the style of play. Even like the first 2 or 3 games that Ange had in the Scottish Premiership, you could see immediately what his teams wanted to do. Whereas with Rodgers, it's just been the complete opposite this season.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I get what you mean. Like being at press conferences and stuff, you can tell he's not much of a straight talker. He likes to talk in terms of metaphors and all these types of things. So it's an interesting character like that. But I'm sure we'll all be praising him greatly if the league title comes home at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think so too. In terms of the Kyogo thing, I just wanted to pull this up because when you were talking about different options and getting the best out of him and stuff like that, style of play. Again, I've heard whenever the Kyogo chat comes up, so I listen to a lot of fan media. I talk to a lot of Celtic fans in person as well, of course. I hear lots of people bring it up from time and again that Kyogo was a left winger when he was in Japan. You know, I just went to actually go and get the actual numbers over the last, I think it's 3 years before signing for Celtic. He played as a wide on the right or the left player over 3 years or more, 18 times. So I wouldn't categorize him as being an out and out winger, but I think what we're seeing more of Kyogo is a little bit more of what he brought when he first signed, and really when he was hitting his peaks back in Japan, is he can really drive with the ball at pace and cause people problems. You know, you'll remember the Ange quote when we signed him was he said he asked his Yokohama players who's the most difficult player in the league to play against, or who's the most dangerous, and it was Kyogo because of not just that Maeda energy in terms of pressing around, but he's lethal. You know, he's got an eye for a pass, he can take a shot, he can pick one out, and I think the whole one-touch Kyogo, or the 3 touches in a game for a goal Kyogo that we've got, is kind of blunting the sword. You know, I feel and he's really needed to change a little bit and adapt and get the rhythm and whatnot going. So I do think he's got a bit more versatility to show in him, but it was just something I thought I would add into the chat just when you were saying that was a wee bell that went off for me. That's something I thought I would throw in. But when it comes to Forrest, again, Kuhn was, like I think it was a decent enough performance from him. His goal against Aberdeen was pretty fluky, but I don't think he was like that. But against Aberdeen, I thought, okay, well, for how long did he play? 20 minutes or something? I thought, well, he got a fluky goal, but he looked the part. He looked okay. And like you say, with the weight loss thing and whatever, he's also struggling to be perfect. So I think with Forrest, the whole thing, like with him, is they are managing him to be effective. We spoke about it in the podcast a few times, but maybe like 6 games a season. He starts, might be a cup, might be the league, and maybe there's half a dozen times or more he comes off the bench over the course of a season and is like the Celtic guy that's still like there kind of thing. So I think it's a little bit of that quality of like playing against the opponent, really knowing the course of who you're against and how to buy the yard, what ball to play, what risk to take in the minute and whatever. But I think if we start seeing Forrest starting in this running that we're in at the moment, considering everything else, it will just cause fans to be upset. And it's nothing against Forrest necessarily, but it just further underlines why are we in this problem, or why are we at this kind of situation of the season. So love Forrest, love him doing well, love him to score a hat-trick, whatever, if he plays against St Johnstone, whatever. But it's just, he feels like he represents issues, and that's just not nice, unfortunately, for him. And so that's kind of, I don't think we'll see him start. I think we'll probably persevere with Kuhn again, won't we? To try and get him up to speed, because again, like we were, what game was it after? But the players were interviewed after the game, and I can't remember what one it was, but it was one that Kuhn featured in, certainly, and they were kind of like, they were talking about like they don't know how good this guy is yet, or something. I can't remember the exact quotes. I'm pretty sure it was Alistair Johnstone, but in a post-match.
Might have been. I can't remember, but it doesn't surprise me because he seems like the type of guy who it's taken a while to get his feet on the ground. Obviously, coming across to Scotland, having his kind of issues with the weight and off the park and things like that, and it has taken a while to get going. But now it feels like there's a time for him to get consistency in the starting 11 and start showing the talent we know that he has, like in the academies of Bayern Munich, Leipzig, and Ajax. We knew he was going to possess that. We were praising the signing when he was signing for the club. So hopefully now he can continue to show that.
Yeah, big time.
He's certainly an interesting player, Kuhn, because he's very different to the other options that we had off the right hand side. You talk about players who want to cut inside, like Kuhn, onto the left foot and that, and the balls he wants to play inside. Even when he dribbles, he just reminds me of Patrick Roberts. His hairstyles like Patrick Roberts. It's just there for us all to see. We're just waiting to see him turn into Patrick Roberts, really, and what he can do in the pitch. You remember when he came for that loan spell for Man City, and the first couple of months, the impact he had at Celtic when we were in arguably a down period under Ronnie Dyler. So we couldn't. It gives us different options off the right hand side. We get Forrest. And I don't want to see Forrest off the left-hand side. At times, Rodgers likes to do that. But Forrest off the right-hand side, his impact, looking to go inside, hug the touchline. Even talk about Forrest, his impact in the game. He plays that ball into the box and he just hangs it up perfectly. But nobody gets their head on it. Ironically, I does off the pitch at that point. You're saying to yourself, it doesn't make too much sense with Rodgers. At times, he makes these substitutions. And then a different player comes on and they would have played to the strengths of the player who he substituted minutes earlier. So that makes no sense to me. But we've got different wingers off the right-hand side now who can play different roles. Forrest and his style of play. You go Yang. For me, Yang will probably be the winger for the rest of the season. And that's up to Kuhn if he can really do something in this game against St Johnstone at the weekend. That's arguably one of his biggest games for Celtic because he's going to need to prove himself and show that I am the number one right winger now. But for me, Yang and his impact alongside Alistair Johnstone, those two linked up well. So it's a very complicated situation. You sign a player in January. It's hard to see what you expect. I know what Ida's done incredible and what he's brought in a short period of time, but January signings aren't always looked back on fondly, are they really?
That's true. Unless you're someone like Ida who's come in and arguably made a really good impact, it is quite hard, especially Kuhn's situation. We know what it's like. So hopefully it can, like you said, the St Johnstone game is a big one for him because he's going to have that chance. We know he's going to start and get that opportunity to really show and build on a performance. We know Livingston are not one of the greatest sides and he was really good. So up in it a notch, I'd say St Johnstone are a tad better than Livy and seeing what he can bring to the game.
I was just double checking I was just having a double check there at the stock list that we've got for the new Celtic Irish collection, or Irish Origins collection that we've had released today. This is the second season in a row that maybe it's more, but my birthday's St. Patrick's Day, so I'm a bit more acutely aware of when this is coming out. This is the second year in a row around St. Patrick's Day, St. Patrick's Week, where we've had some sort of Irish release of a kit. I got it last season for my birthday, and you might not recognize it. You maybe never have seen this kit before because nobody ever fucking wore it, except for me sometimes doing this. But I thought it was quite a smart kit. It's quite cool, I think, but pointless. Actual pointless. Like it's so. And also, by the way, just in case you forgot, we actually have already released a pointless kit this season. Another belter, by the way, like this thing. Do you all remember this?
I forgot about it. I have it, and I even forgot about it.
That is incredible. I think they should genuinely wear that one in the Borussia Dortmund Legends game that they have coming up, because that is an absolute beauty of a kit. On the Irish Origin stuff, I can see like the typical. We have this phrase, Celtic Daz. I can see all the Celtic Daz rushing to buy the stuff. Listen, some of it's actually contrary to wide opinion. I feel some of it's actually pretty smart.
The shirt's good.
The jersey,
the top is good.
Yeah, the jersey's nice, but am I going to shell out £55 on a top that Celtic are never going to wear in a game? Absolutely not. Unless, I think that one you've got, Quinny, I heard someone saying that in the East Kilbride store, it was on sale a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago for £20. So if you're wise, you'll save your money and wait until, I don't know, a couple of months. Exactly, when nobody's bought it, and St. Patrick's Day's, it's closer to next St. Patrick's Day, go and buy it for 20 quid in a superstore sale near you. So I'm not a big believer in bringing out this stuff every year, commercialised rubbish. But listen, it's a way for those at the top of the club to line their pockets, and I'm sure they try to do that in every way. And this is another one of them. The top's nice, the jersey's nice, but I'm not going to buy anything from it personally. I don't know about you.
I think it's a certain type of person they're looking for. The sort of person who maybe wears Celtic tops every day or to work and stuff. Like, I'm not the sort of person that wears football tops every day, but there's definitely, at a football club, you'll have fans who are that ingrained in the club that they want to wear. And they'll have a choice for every weekday. They can maybe wear a different Celtic top now. Even last season, I think there was there an extra kit we released as well? I think there was another one.
That was the first one I grabbed.
Yeah. The St. Patrick's Day one last year.
And then I think there was another one I remember. And even this season, we've released other sort of stuff. You get into JD Sports, you're talking about all the different kits. At times, I even don't know what the tops are because there's that many coming out. It's sort of hard to keep up with how many kits. But that's maybe a testament to Adidas. Like, these sort of things weren't happening before we signed that partnership with Adidas. Like, it seemed like we done the free kits, but we didn't have any special kits that came out. And this will probably be a tradition. Every year now we release a different sort of St. Patrick's Day kit for Celtic, and with Adidas, Adidas were in a sort of tough situation. I think with Kanye West, they were losing out on money, so they're obviously looking to make extra money through things like this with Celtic. And the New Balance, it sort of gets stale, so it's definitely a positive in some aspects for people who want to pay the money. But as Josh says, I won't be paying for it personally myself.
I think it's definitely. I like the quarter zip as well. To be honest with you, I don't mind.
Nice.
I like football swag. I like cool football gear. I like the club trying to, how many games can most fans go to per season? Sure, some people pay for TV subscriptions and whatever, but some people do just think, I'll get a wee jump. We don't all kick about with football tops these days. It is like a zipper or a hoodie or something like that. For most adults these days, certainly. Anyway. And when you go into the shop, most of it is just the training gear. And if you don't want to kick about with training gear, there's not much there, sort of thing. So I don't mind a wee bit of swag. I don't mind a little bit of the commercialization if it's like Adidas that are driving it, and they're, they're like, we're going to put all this stuff on because
it's maybe more Adidas than just Celtic themselves. And I think people maybe forget that in some aspects.
That's totally true. Yeah.
Because when you look at other clubs around world football, they all release special kits and cool swag and different, like, I think they're called like anthem jackets or whatever, but see the tops that they wear coming out with pre-game. I think some clubs release like 3 of them a year, and some of them are like nice, like cool zippers and stuff like that. So I kind of like it, and I don't know, as we were chatting about this, and I pulled the tops off the rack, I was thinking maybe I'm the problem. Maybe because I keep getting these things, like they keep bringing them out because there is some tubes that are buying them. So granted, the one of them was a birthday present, and alas, I'm probably going to get another one for a birthday present, I dare say. So yeah, anyone in the comment section, feel free to let us know what you think about the Irish Origins collection. Certainly, will you be indulging, or is it a bit of commercial crap that you're not going to entertain? Let us know. Could be a great kit for, like, don't want to say any names, but if you were like maybe a part of a Celtic amateur part-time kind of outfit or something like that, could be a really cool kit to just maybe adopt and just take as your own, because nobody else is using it. But yeah.
I think but I do like the jersey, like we've said, and it's kind of different to what we've had. Like, you rarely get a Celtic jersey, because like the third kits and away kits are like not green, because the home one's green. It's very not often you get one where it's like entirely green, and the white stripes kind of go well with it. And I do like the red and stuff they have around the collars of some of the other gear, so it's all right. But like we've said, I'm not going to be. It's like, see, for the whole tracksuit, if you want the whole tracksuit, I priced it's like £105. Like, I'm sorry, who's paying £105 for a tracksuit? I have a part-time job as well in Primark, and go in there and get one for like £15, £10 that's green. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm sure there is folk who will buy it, and obviously it's the reason they've brought it out, but I don't think all of us are going to be indulging in it, like you said, Quinny.
What I thought was interesting was the people that was in the video. You talk about O'Reilly, you talk about Scales. I didn't see Maeda. Was Maeda in the video?
No, it wasn't.
No, so this has obviously been set up a couple of months ago before he's signed. Ironically, we sign an Irish player, we release an Irish Origins kit. Well, I think we've maybe missed out on something there, but we could have Maeda pointing to his tattoo in the video as well. I think the Celtic PR team know what they're doing here. They're really driving up this Irish heritage sort of thing, with the background of the club and how we were founded. So it's obviously going to do well with a lot of the fan base, but as me and Josh say, with the cost of living crisis that we're in now, it's hard for some people to afford stuff like this, especially 5 kits a season. And if you're maybe saying to family, oh, I want another football kit as a present for a birthday or a Christmas, they'd be like that, but you've already got 2 or 3.
Yeah, that's very true, actually. It is quite... Collecting just football gear in general is an expensive hobby. Like, anything, like kits are like 60-70 quid for like an actual pro shirt nowadays. Then if you want a name in the back, you're paying an extra £10-15 as well. So in the current financial climate, as you would put it, it is quite hard to keep up with this mad number of kits and gear that's coming out.
Big time. I think someone who will definitely be picking up the Irish Origins collection is Mikey Johnstone, who is getting goal bonuses, assist bonuses galore right now in the Championship. So he'll be picking up probably the full kit, you've got to think. He'll be getting the trackie, he'll be getting the quarter zip, the full zip, and the hoodie. And he's loving life at the moment, isn't he? This is a bit of a chat we were having before coming on the show, and a lot of Celtic fans are really looking at the Mikey Johnstone paradigm, the paradox, and thinking, how is this happening? And how did it not happen kind of up here? Great to see for the guy. He is only on loan, so it's not over till they say it's over, as they say. But and we Mikey going from strength to strength down in the English Championship in a promotion pushing team.
Yeah, it's nice to see. As much as a lot of Celtic fans seem to dislike him because of his performances for the club and stuff, when you look at the kind of upbringing, let's just say, he had coming through the Celtic Academy and things like that, it's good to see a player like that going on and excelling elsewhere like he is. I think it's 6 goals and 1 assist in 10 games. He's doing really well for himself. He's got a goal contribution every 75 minutes, I believe it is. So fair play to him, and it just shows what a move like that can do for a player. He's finding consistency in terms of minutes and performance levels so hard to come by at Celtic, and he goes down to the English Championship, a team like West Brom who are relatively good, like you said, pushing for promotion. To be doing well with them is is very pleasing to see. And the goals he's scoring are not just back post tap-ins, scrappy goals. They're actual beautiful strikes. The one he scored on Friday night away at QPR, or maybe Thursday night, whatever it was last week, it was a 0.01 XG shot and flies into the top corner. It was an absolutely brilliant strike. So it's great to see him doing well. And listen, I don't imagine he's going to be coming back to Celtic and challenging for a place in the first team come the summer, because I think he's run his course at the club. And listen, I wouldn't put it past the manager to give him a chance again. But if he does, let's say West Brom want him permanently, what he's done so far is only going to push a potential transfer fee up, because there's no set option to buy, which only bodes well for Celtic. So it's good to see him doing well, and hopefully West Brom will sign him permanently for a good couple of million, especially if they get into that Premier League. I'm sure Celtic and Peter Lawwell and the likes will look to milk a big transfer fee out of that move.
I think as well, we played him off the right-hand side at times earlier in the season. That's not his position. When you look at that, you're playing a player like Mickey Johnstone who wants to play off the left-hand side. I know we've got competition off the left, but that is his best position. And as hard as it is, people don't understand at times how difficult it is for a winger at Celtic and the tasks you face. You face teams that domestically just want to sit in. Mickey Johnston's expected to drive through them all and then score. And he might be getting a wee bit more space in the English Championship to dribble past people. And he's not having to play against his deep defences at times. And that's nothing against Mickey Johnstone. That not all wingers are destined to be Celtic legends, are they? That's just it. He's come through the academy. He's had a respectable career so far, and he's obviously doing incredible in England. For me, I want to see a bidding war. I want to see lower English Premier League sides and upper Championship sides bidding for him. I don't think he's destined to be a Celtic player next season. In the role at the club, he's had plenty of time to prove himself. I was looking back, and I think it was May 2017, he made his first team appearance for the club, and he actually got an assist, which is impressive in its own right, but he's just not kicked on since then. He had that loan spell in Portugal. At times this season, we were maybe hoping that he would step up, and he looked to have made a decent impact against Hibs. I think he hit the crossbar at Easter Road. But it's just one of those circumstances, again, where we've brought a player through the youth academy, and maybe that they're just not good enough. And ironically, compared to some players that we've brought through in recent years, Mickey Johnstone was brought into the first team and he was given plenty of opportunities. And if English football suits him better, it's better for his career, and he needs to get that next step in his career to jump and become a ready first team player that plays week in, week out. That you don't know what that does for a player's psychology, being on the bench so much, being out injured. That's a real sin in itself for a player like Mickey Johnstone to have been through that. He's had quite a lot of injuries, and people like to criticise him. And I've met Mickey Johnstone at press conferences. I've spoke to him. He seems like a very nice guy, and people like to criticise him. But I think the one thing you can always say about Mickey Johnstone when he's on the pitch, he tries his best. He tries something. He tries to beat a man. And at times when you're playing against those deep defences in Scotland, you're maybe not going to get what you're looking for when you do that. Whereas in England, he's just looked a rejuvenated player. So, and Brendan Rodgers, he said he had that conversation with him, and they spoke about that you're maybe not going to play. And that says something about Mickey Johnston's attitude as a football player, that he wanted to leave Celtic and go out on loan and play consistent minutes instead of just sitting in the back and in reserve and not playing games.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I make you quite right there. I think the experience he had with Portugal, like going over to Guimarães or whatever you cried them last year, has probably gave him that bit of confidence of, I can have a life after Celtic, in that regard. And I think we've seen it. I was saying this to Josh before coming on, and a few other people I've been chatting to since he's absolutely ripped Huddersfield open over the weekend there. But I think some players, like they do better in better football, like elite level football, the English Championship, the Premier League, the top 5 leagues in European football. It's borderline a different sport in a lot of different ways. The space, the time, the preparation, the opposition, so many things are so different, So I think like Mickey Johnstone, he's kind of like walking in the footsteps of like Timo Pukki, who like in Scotland, like really couldn't really cut the mustard, wasn't really a guy that you're like, oh, this guy should be starting every week for us. He looked okay, didn't really, cut the mustard ultimately. Goes to the Championship and then was the top striker there, got the team promoted.
Don't know how many seasons he scored like 20 plus goals in the Championship as well. It was incredible.
Yeah, and in the Premier League, he was a credible striker for a year or two, and In Scotland, we were all kind of scratching our head, like looking at it. And Celtic fans, we love an ex-Celtic player that goes on to be great. And when Pookie done it, it was kind of awkward because we were all kind of like, how? And he was actually kind of crap for us, So like, how is this happening? But I think, it's not much of a surprise for me that Mikey Johnson's like doing better in the Championship. It's the same as like the boys that go to Italy, and they're playing like higher caliber football, better preparation, and all the other stuff that goes into it. Better players will thrive in those situations. So, and again, like the guy being a Celtic fan, maybe that's too much, or maybe that's having a negative impact on his preparation or his decision making on the ball, or whatever it is, nerves. Could be a number of different things. Some people can't play for their boyhood team. It's doesn't work.
He's got a lot less pressure under him at West Brom. They're not a team that's expected to win every week. At Celtic, that is the expectation. I'm just going to raise a point about his international career now. Steve Clarke, I think, looking at his performances, will be absolutely gutted that Johnstone has pledged his allegiances to Ireland already, because he's potentially the type of player that Scotland miss, like the guy that can run at defences and unlock them. And let's be honest, when you're playing for Scotland, there's no expectation to win every single game, so that environment would potentially suit him. It's the same at Ireland. Like you see here, he's got 2 goals and 6 appearances for them. It's quite a decent record. So international career's doing well as well, and hopefully he can just build on what he's doing at West Brom between now and the end of the season.
Yeah. Both goals against Gibraltar, but we'll ignore that. Love it. So we've kind of went round the bases on everything, guys. St Johnstone is the last game of it's the penultimate chapter of the season. They're making back after this international break, and it is then the run to the title, isn't it?
Yeah.
St Johnstone, we've played them a bunch of times this year, like most other teams. It's a team, again, at home. We do expect a convincing result. Some of the predicted 11 stuff we've kind of knocked around already off the back of the Livingston game is kind of there to be seen. But do we expect, like, Livingston were potentially a bit of a banana skin on the cards there at the weekend, if, like you said, the way the scoreline went and the way the game panned out. St Johnstone are, they're not incapable of that, are they?
Yeah, listen, St Johnstone have caused Celtic problems this season. 0-0 at Parkhead earlier in the season. I mean, we went to McDermott Park. It was a very tough game as well. It took until like 79th, 80th minute for Matt O'Reilly to put Celtic in front with a wonder goal. So Craig Levine always has his teams organised pretty well. So it's going to be a tough task. Listen, it's about Celtic, like every other league game at home, unless it's Rangers or someone like that, where you're just looking to unlock that defence who's going to sit in and be stout throughout the 90 minutes. And that's what I expect. In terms of the lineup, like we've kind of bashed around it, like you said, Quinny, Kuhn and Maeda, and definitely start for me. Kyogo, I would say, starts. The midfield probably remains the same unless you get an absolutely miraculous return from injury from a player. In the back line, Johnson and Taylor are nailed on. Hart's nailed on. Scales, like you said, I have no doubt he's going to start. It's just whether Rodgers prevails with Welsh, whether he deems Carter Vickers fit enough to play 60 minutes, even a half, or whether he throws in a wee wild card like Lagerbielke could play in. So just have to wait and see. But it's like you say, it's kind of the end of this kind of block of games. It's quite a long run of games, this, from end of January all the way to mid to end of March. Probably one of the longest runs of the season without an international break. So good to get the players, and the international break gives guys like Hatate, Vickers, McGregor the chance to build that fitness and get a solid week or so's training in at Lennoxtown ahead of the game against Livingston. So main priority is to pick up 3 points. But for me, what the lineup is in 1 or 2 positions is going to be interesting.
It's going to be a completely different sort of game because we were playing a cup game against Livingston and it was on the day. It wasn't even as if Livingston had to play for a replay. So Livingston came out in the second half and they kind of went for the game. You see that with Kyogo's goal late in the game, how far Livingston push up the pitch. In St Johnstone, they didn't start the season well. I think they lost their first 2 games of the league season 2-0, and then they come to Celtic Park and they get a 0-0 draw. That was a beginning of the frustrations, I think, for Celtic, and that was the first time I seen Liam Scales in the team, that he was on the ball and you could see what he'd bring. But for me, the international break's coming at a good time for Celtic. We look at the opposite side. We went into the winter break and we were in flying and we were playing great before the winter break, and we've come out the other end and it's not been the way we went in. So in some aspects we get players back and players recovering like Hatate. But it's interesting that Yang and O haven't been named in the South Korea squad. And I just hope that we come through the international break unscaled, because at times this season, we've had players come back for the international break, they've picked up injuries, and it's not what we want to see at this stage of the season. I think it's that Johnstone will come and they'll just look to defend, and they'll be happy with whatever they can get. And it's more about Celtic. We want to see the Celtic at old, the Celtic take care of teams in the first 20, 30 minutes, get an early goal. That's really what we want. I think even Brendan Rodgers knows that himself. That's down to him and the players to change what we've seen this season. We've had frustrating long spells, even times in games when we've been 1-0 down to teams, 2-1 down to teams that we really wouldn't have anticipated in the league. And that's sort of what this season's been about. It's just been about frustration. And so as long as we take care of St Johnstone, I'm happy, even if it's a late goal, and we just go straight into the international break, and hopefully we come out the other end firing, because we know what we have to do. We basically have to be perfect in the league and in the cup to secure a double. And I think that's incredible, that how poor at times Celtic have played, and we could still win a double this season. And for me, if I'm Brendan Rodgers, I say to the players, just forget about what's been in the past. Now, that's it. It's in the past. Focus on the future and the present and what we can do. And what was it says? Control our own narrative, control our own story. He's saying those sort of things. And I quite believe that he's saying that things have went against Celtic, whether it be refereeing decisions, injuries, and yous have done great. So that's the sort of thing that I think will be going through the Celtic camp, that we have to just control this season. And the players that have been there and done it will be crucial in securing victories and even securing trophies.
Yes, the good thing is it's within Celtic's destiny. It's within their own hands that they can go and win a double still. Listen, it's not like the title's totally out of reach. The title is well within Celtic's grasp and a very big possibility. It's the same with the Scottish Cup. So they need to look at it from a positive point of view, like we've said. I'm sure they will. And with guys like McGregor, Hatate, Carter Vickers coming back into the team ahead of this run-in, things are looking positive.
I think so, yeah. I think this St Johnstone game, I think we need to push for like an Aberdeen at home result where we go and score 4 or more, and really get
goal difference is important.
Get a big one going, because some people gasp their breath when you bring them up. But them across the road got a draw in the first leg of their game against Benfica, much to my dismay and bemusement. But they're playing their second leg this Thursday. We're recording this on the Tuesday. And then they go away to Dundee. Early kickoff on the Sunday on St Patrick's Day at Celts. Dundee, as we know, no pushovers, especially on their own pitch. So there was an opportunity that was missed. If there is going to be an opportunity again this weekend, I want to make sure that if it is a last minute goal or whatever, Michael, like you're saying, of course, we'll just take the points and move on. But I would love, before the break, really just put the wind in the sails, go and have another game where we smash 4 or more goals out and really go for it.
It very much just like 11 goals in the last 2 home games Celtic have scored, so it is very much possible to go out and get a result like that, especially against St Johnstone. You get the early goal, it can be crucial, and like you said, Michael, goal difference can be massive, because we've seen it happen before in title races gone by where goals have decided titles, and that's could happen this time around, and Celtic want to make sure they've got enough in the bank to cover it if it does come down to that.
I think we've got to give ourselves rooms for maybe error in some ways. If we maybe get an advantage over Rangers, it means we maybe don't have to go to Ibrox and win the game, because that's a lot of pressure. But at the same time, what's the odds that Rangers drop any more points? Who could have foreseen them losing to Motherwell at home? I certainly could have. But in some aspects, we've got to look at that positively, because going into that weekend, if we didn't drop any points and Rangers didn't drop any points, we'd have been happy with that. I know we had the chance to go top, but everything seemed to go wrong at Tynecastle, and in my opinion, maybe some of it was out of our own hands with the decision making. And we actually put up good XG numbers in that game, and I think that says a lot about Hearts this season as well. I know they're third in the league, but they didn't really impress me too much. So, and we're obviously going to have the split, but that will be interesting to see what teams make the top 6, whether it's a Dundee or a Hibs, because we're going to have to go away to teams towards the end of the season and how we'll perform. So it's definitely a very interesting part of the season, and as long as we can just go over this weekend, I'll be happy. And we take a week away for Celtic, and we think about the international football, and then we go back to Celtic after that. Hopefully we've got Hatate in contention for the Livingston game, and he's just going to be a big player for me. It's the sort of thing where a player, you don't know what you've got until it's gone. And when Hatate's out of the squad, you appreciate him more and what he brings. I even seen highlights, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, of the 2 goals he scored against Aberdeen at home. It was just absolutely incredible what he was doing last season.
Just before we finish, the Scotland squad has just been named. And in it for Celtic is Anthony Ralston and Greg Taylor. So no Callum McGregor. But for Celtic, it's Tony Ralston and Greg Taylor who get the call-ups. No really notable names. No new names.
No Turnbull, no?
No Turnbull. Nope.
Ferguson?
Ferguson's in, yep. Billy Gilmore, Liam Cooper, Grant Hanley's back in. Scott McKenna and the like. There we go there. So quite I'd say that's quite a decent squad from a Scotland perspective. But Tony Ralston and Greg Taylor, I doubt though both of them will get many minutes. Ralston might at right back because obviously Hickey's injured, so it's between him and Patterson. And it's obviously 2 friendlies, so I assume they will get minutes. But Taylor, with Tierney and Robertson both in the squad, I doubt he's going to play a lot. And obviously, like we were saying, injuries-wise, you don't want to risk Greg Taylor, particularly after we've let Bernardo go, get an injury, then you end up relying.
Interesting quotes on that for Rogers, speaking about we can play Scales at left-back, even though we weren't playing Scales when Bernabeu was there. So it's, yet again, interesting words for Rogers. In some aspects, say, we can just play Scales there. But for me, I don't think it's that simple. At times, you can just shift a player from one position to another, and it just all works. It's more complicated than that.
Yeah, definitely. But Scotland squad, I'm sure both the boys will get minutes. Ralston probably more than Taylor. But yeah, Scales at left back would be interesting. A lot of fans have suggested it in the past, but I don't think it will happen. And I wouldn't be full of confidence if we done it.
Yeah, it would have to be like really lopsided, where it's basically like a back 4 that becomes a back 3, or it is a back 3. Kind of, yeah. I'm thinking more like if you think about maybe kind of similar to what you see with it's maybe something a bit more like Germany and stuff like that, Spain. But you find that some of these back 4s now, they basically play like 3 centre backs, and one of them, the right back and the left back, is like a winger almost in terms of open play, and the rest of the 4 just kind of dive in. Wouldn't mind that, but we don't want them overlapping Maeda, do we? So like that's when it stops for me.
That's chaos.
Yeah, totally. And you guys going to the game at the weekend?
I'll be there,
yeah. I'll be writing for the website for the game.
Oh, love it. Good stuff. Well, anyone who's listening to the show, if you're going to the game as well, Josh, Michael as well, travel safe, have fun this weekend, and on the hoops, hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
Cheers.